Relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. The action in the featherweight division this past weekend. To my surprise, Brazil's own Danilo Ramos was able to win a points decision in Argentina against Argentinian slugger Brenda Carbajal, then WBO interim champion. And what that essentially means is now that
Danilo Ramos is the WBO's mandatory challenger to Amanda Serrano.
That's what that means. She's WBO interim champion. Unless Brenda Carbajal had a rematch clause or unless Danilo Ramos is willing to give her one before this year is out, it looks like Danilo is en route to either challenge Amanda Serrano straight away or
be elevated to full champion should Amanda vacate the WBO title and the others.
The fight between Danilo and Brenda happening in Argentina, it had no U.S. broadcast partner. There was no way to watch it, at least none that I knew of here stateside. To my surprise, Danilo won the fight. I went with Brenda to win a points decision.
Theater of the unexpected.
Have to conduct an independent search and see if anybody uploads the fight replay to YouTube to get a look at how exactly Danilo pulled this off. Danilo has been in there with good fighters like Katharina Thunders, Elham Mekhaled, above the featherweight limit.
She's fought above 126 pounds.
Significant victory and significant action for Danilo Ramos in the women's featherweight division, but that's not all. The United Kingdom's own Raven Chapman was also in action this past weekend opposite the ring. Brazilian Lila Furtado. That fight worked out as I predicted. It worked out as I expected. Another fight.
Raven Chapman scored an early knockdown, went on to win a points decision as part of a Queensbury show on the undercard of Dennis McCann's fight.
Fight didn't have a U.S. broadcast partner. Some Queensbury Promotions fights do, some don't.
This was a mostly domestic fight, domestic level, a small hall show, so I guess ESPN Plus decided they weren't going to pick this one up.
In any event, seems that Raven Chapman met my expectations. I expected that she would meet and defeat Lila Furtado. She's just got a higher ceiling than this fighter in what was a battle of the unbeatens going into it.
I think a fight between Raven Chapman and Danilo Ramos, who both secured the W this past weekend, I think a fight between them is in order. I think a fight between them would make a lot of sense.
That is unless Amanda Serrano so decides to face Danilo Ramos, one of her mandatory challengers. That is unless Amanda Serrano decides to fight her straight away before this year is out. There is still time for Amanda to have one more fight, one more title defense.
She can defend against Danilo Ramos, though if she doesn't, I think Team Chapman should look to corner the Brazilian and get a fight with her before this year is out.
Danilo Ramos, who sports a professional record of 12 wins with 2 losses, no draws, 1 recorded knockout, just 1 in 14 professional bouts, having never been knocked out in 14 professional bouts.
The Raven Chapman, who sports a professional record of 7 wins with no losses, no draws, 2 knockouts. Only 2 recorded knockouts, but don't let that fool you. Raven Chapman is a stronger puncher than Danilo Ramos, even if she doesn't have many more knockouts than she does.
There's more to boxing than what you see on paper. And even though Raven doesn't have that many more knockouts than Danilo, if you've seen this fighter in action, you'll know that Raven is good for a knockdown and in some instances good for a knockout. For me and my money, she's got a higher ceiling than Danilo Ramos. And the point and purpose behind matching them is that Raven's not the mandatory challenger to any of the 4 alphabet titles at this weight, but she could become one if she takes on Danilo. The other fighters,
former champion Erica Cruz, who's ranked at number 1 by way of the WBC. She's spoken for. She's going to be fighting Melissa Odessa Parker.
Former IBF champion Sarah Mahfoud is set to take on Argentinian legend Marcela Acuña in her own neck of the woods. She's ranked at number 1 by way of the IBF.
Leaving Germany's own Lina Menke, who's ranked at number 1 by way of the WBA, and Danilo Ramos, who very soon will be ranked at number 1 by way of the WBO. These are 2 fighters that Raven Chapman can and should target for at least one more fight before this year is out.
Plenty of time to schedule another match before the year is out, though they will have to make it worth Danilo Ramos' while. Why should Danilo gamble losing to Raven Chapman if she's in a pole position to either fight for all of the belts or become a champion herself?
Should they go vacant?
Takes money to make money, that's what they say, and you have to pay to play.
Yeah.
think it would make a lot of sense for Raven to pursue a fight with either Nina Menke or Danila Ramos, if she can. If she can't, it's really not the end of the world. She's only got 7 fights as a professional anyway. She might need some more rounds in the bank, and there's nothing wrong with that.
She could use a few more fights.
Congratulations to her for racking up another victory this past weekend, as well as Danila Ramos, the WBO's newly crowned interim champion. We'll see what happens. Men's welterweight news, unbeaten up-and-comer Ramos Stanionis is confident that he can knock Keith Thurman out. I will say that if they were to schedule that fight next, that wouldn't be far-fetched at all. Keith Thurman hasn't fought since the Mario Barrios fight early last year. It's been over a year's time since then. There are a few names that Stanionis is now sifting through. Amongst them is Keith Thurman. Inactivity has also plagued the former unified champion's career, from injury issues to merely waiting until bigger opportunities arrive. Thurman simply hasn't fought much as of late. When things are clicking on all cylinders and the 34-year-old is motivated, he's proven to be an upper echelon welterweight. Still, regardless of his elite status, Stanionis not only believes he has what it takes to beat him, but ultimately brutally stop him. Yes, Stanionis told BoxingScene.com when asked if he would knock out Thurman.
It's important to note that Ramos Stanionis, like Keith Thurman, hasn't fought in over a year. He hasn't fought since the Radzov Butaev fight, which was a good fight.
In the subsequent months that followed, he was tapped to face unbeaten up-and-comer Virgil Ortiz, but Ramos Stanionis, he suffered an appendicitis. That delayed the Ortiz fight, at which point Ortiz had his own medical issues, his own problems.
Another bout with rhabdomyolysis.
Now Virgil Ortiz is set to be moving up in weight, presumably to either junior middle or middle, and the fight with Ramos Stanionis is off indefinitely, leaving Ramos Stanionis looking for a dance partner. When he can, he has watched Thurman's performances. Although he doesn't have much to choose from, he's noticed a few patterns in Thurman's game. Up until this point, only Manny Pacquiao has exploited those holes. Stanionis, though, doesn't have world titles in 8 separate divisions like Pacquiao does. But with that said, he wholeheartedly believes that Thurman makes the sort of mistakes that will play into his hands. He's going to run around, but I can catch him. His defense is not so good, and his chin is in the air, so I think I can catch him.
One of Keith Thurman's finer qualities, at least in the past, it's not just his power, because he has some power. He's had some power in the past, even if it's been a long time since he knocked somebody out.
Long gone are the days of Keith one-time Thurman. But along with his power, one of Keith Thurman's finer qualities, at least in the past, were his legs, his ability to move lateral, fight on the fly, set traps, set up big shots, big counter shots, big punches. At 34 years old, having not fought in over a year's time and having averaged, what? 1 fight a year in the last 2 going on 3 years?
Remember, before the Mario Barrios fight early last year, before that, he hadn't fought since the Pacquiao fight in 2019.
Between the Pacquiao fight and the Barrios fight, there were 2 years. He sits out all of 2020, sits out all of 2021, comes back in early 2022, but sits out most of the year.
And it's been a year since then, so that's 1 fight in the last 3 years.
And there's no excuses for it, not for Keith Thurman. Oh, you could argue that Keith has been in limbo because he was waiting for Errol Spence Jr. to come around, that he was waiting for things to fall apart between Terrence and Errol so that he could fight Errol.
But that's no excuse. I mean, look at Tim Tszyu. Tim's been waiting to fight Jermell Charlo, and even though he never got him, and he's not going to...
While Tim Tszyu was waiting to get that fight with Jermell Charlo, and he saw that things weren't working out, that he wasn't going to get to fight him straight away, he scheduled a fight with Tony Harrison. After that, while still waiting, things still not working out, he schedules another fight with Carlos Ocampo. Bottom line, he doesn't let one fighter stifle his schedule.
Those 2 fights took place in the last 12 months.
And under 12 months, if we're being honest, since both of those fights happened this year. This year isn't even over yet. Tim Tszyu may fight 3 times before this year is out, leaving no excuses for a fighter like Keith Thurman that if you wanted to fight and you wanted to get out there, you could have. You just really don't want to.
You're using waiting for Errol Spence as an excuse to be even more inactive.
That if you really wanted to, you could have squeezed in a fight last year. Terrence Crawford did.
But wasn't he waiting for Errol?
Yeah, and look at what waiting for Errol got him. Did it pay off?
No.
This year, as soon as talks resumed for a Terrence Crawford fight between Errol Spence Jr. and Terrence Crawford, there again was another opportunity for Keith Thurman to schedule himself a fight with somebody, anybody. Currently, he's supposed to be in talks to fight former champion Yordenis Ugas, but summer has all but come and gone. So it's looking like if Keith does fight this year, it will be the only fight that he has.
I don't think he's going to fight Stanionis in his next fight.
The landscape at 147 pounds is set to change, as Terrence Crawford is this division's undisputed champion now, but Terrence may be moving up in weight very soon, thereby vacating all the titles he just won in his last fight.
Stanionis is in a pole position to become WBA champion. Keith Thurman is in a pole position to become WBC champion.
Philadelphia's own Jaron Boots Ennis is in a pole position to become a champion by way of the IBF, and Alexis Rocha, Golden Boy Promotions, he's set to become a champion. He could by way of the WBO.
It's the lay of the land.
You have to figure that if Stanionis has a choice, has the option of facing Keith Thurman instead of, say, Jaron Boots Ennis, that's an option he would like to explore. And being honest, I do like his chances against Keith a lot more than I like his chances against Boots. Boots has been fighting.
Yeah, he just fought.
Wouldn't be wise to take on Jaron Boots Ennis off a layoff like that. Under these circumstances, a Keith Thurman fight would be more opportune, though alas, I don't get the sense that's what we're going to see. I don't think Stanionis is going to fight Keith next. I heard Keith is going to be fighting Nugas, and I'm under the impression that he still will.
It's a safer fight for Keith.
So who's Stanionis going to fight? Your guess is as good as mine.
I don't know.
Need to hurry up and get that kid a fight. Gave a great account of himself against then unbeaten Radzov Butaev, and the welterweight division will need a shot in the arm. Fresh fighters, fresh new faces.
He's one of them.
Finally, in men's heavyweight news, Wilder versus Joshua to be finalized in 2 or 3 weeks, says Eddie Hearn.
People are still reacting to Anthony Joshua's performance against Robert Helenius. In spite of that highlight reel knockout that ended the fight, everything in between the first round and the knockout has people left wondering if Anthony has what it takes to stop this guy. Eddie Hearn said, I think it will be finalized in 2 or 3 weeks, Hearn told Fight Hub TV. I've been to Saudi Arabia twice to negotiate the fight. I've had 2 meetings, 3 meetings in London. I'm not doing it for banter. My instructions from Anthony Joshua are, I want to fight Deontay Wilder. The only way this fight doesn't happen is if Saudi doesn't deliver the fight. Wilder's manager, Shelly Finkel, Wilder, as far as I'm hearing from them directly, they are in. We are in. We just need to sign a contract and go through the procedures to get that done. Any potential hindrances to the fight? Anything that might stop it from happening?
AJ Wilder stuff, that was my final question. I've seen some commentary about the fact that you're putting it on the Saudis in terms of if it breaks down. Is that something that you think's fair, or do you think...
No, I'm just, people keep saying to me, why would that fight not happen? And the answer was, if we can't agree on the money. That's basically it. So I'm not putting it on them. I'm just saying that that would be a reason that it wouldn't happen. And, we know the numbers that we're talking about. And unfortunately, if we can't get there, it won't happen at this point. But it's the only fight we want.
If it doesn't happen, I think Joshua will fight in December, but I'm not spinning that fight. All of our efforts have been for that fight, Hearn said. Honestly, I wouldn't waste my time flying all around the world trying to pretend that that's the fight we want. That is the fight we want. It's a massive fight, massive money, and that is what I have been instructed to deliver for Anthony. We are positive, like I said. We are in. If it can be delivered, we are in.
The heavyweight division needs this fight. Matchroom needs this fight.
It's been a rough year for Matchroom, losing the Canelo Alvarez acquisition, the ongoing pet fiasco with Conor Benn, now Alicia Baumgartner, Dillian White's woes.
Hasn't been a good year for them. They need this fight, and so does Anthony Joshua.
Comes to him, Eddie Hearn says, I think if he can be a little bit more aggressive with the style that he's adopted, with the way he's improved his feet, his movement, his defense, his distance, I think he's going to be, it's difficult to say unbeatable, but I think he beats everyone. I'm so confident he beats Deontay Wilder.
And maybe he really feels that way, or maybe he's just a promoter doing what promoters do, promoting his fighter.
Perhaps a bit of both, though there is a feeling that Anthony needs this fight, and for his legacy, he needs to win it. There are some people that have been unconvinced of Anthony for a very long time, many of which are picking Deontay to beat him, picking Deontay to stop him, if Anthony can prove them wrong.
There's a feather in his cap.
Anthony, who's fought 2 times, at least 2 times just this calendar year, whereas Deontay has yet to see action, and it's looking more and more like he's not going to. Summer has all but come and gone.
Deontay hasn't fought.
World Boxing Council have now since canceled their order for Deontay to face Andy Ruiz in a final eliminator to determine the next mandatory for Tyson Fury's WBC world title, as the fight has not been made. World Boxing Council will re-evaluate and make a new ruling at their convention in November.
So he's not fighting Andy.
No word on Deontay Wilder fighting anyone else, and what you have to consider is Deontay Wilder's not going to get out of bed for just any amount of money, just for any opponent. You know, when he gets out there, he does want to make a certain amount.
But he can't make that with just anybody. He already had his run out with Robert Helenius less than 12 months ago.
His tune-up fight. Is he going to squeeze in another one? Because I personally think he needs to. If he don't fight all of this calendar year and he goes straight into that Anthony Joshua fight, it's not just Anthony you have to consider, it's Deontay as well. What are his timing and his reflexes? What are they going to be like having not fought in over 12 months?
Snapping out that right hand, it relies on that.
You often hear it said that power is the last thing to go, but in some instances a fighter's timing, reflexes, and his legs, those are the first. And the idea that Deontay don't need a tune-up fight, that he don't need a run-out fight at all.
No, I don't agree with that.
On one end you say that Anthony's been looking tentative, far too tentative. He's almost scared to pull the trigger, scared to step into his punches and bring over a strong right hand, commit to it. On one end, you have to consider that, but you also have to consider that Deontay is some years older than Anthony Joshua, more wear and tear, more surgeries to the same arm.
2 systematic beatings to the same guy, Tyson Fury, the kind of beatings that could leave a fighter altered. His punch resistance, sapped.
Would have been better off if Tyson Fury just connected with one hard shot in the first round and took him out. Instead, he suffered 2 systematic beatings, round after round after round, in their last 2 meetings, their last 2 outings.
Nobody asks, what's Wilder's punch resistance like after that? Because he only fought Robert Helenius for a single round and Robert didn't land a punch.
To Wilder's credit, he ended the fight early. I'm not holding that against him. I'm just saying that fight, we didn't get answers. We didn't get any answers in that fight.
What is this guy's punch resistance like? What about his cardio? He never had the best engine.
There's more to boxing than meets the eye. Yeah, Wilder's on the much slimmer end of the spectrum as far as heavyweights go. He doesn't have as big a trunk, carrying as much weight as some other guys, but his cardio is actually quite poor. It's not uncommon to see him tired.
In the last Tyson Fury fight, the third one, you saw Wilder win the first round by being busier than he normally is. Busier with the jab upstairs and the stab downstairs. And it was working, but by the second round, he was already breathing with his mouth open.
Wilder's never been all that prolific a puncher. He relies on a single punch, a single shot, and he's looking to land that shot most of a round, most of the fight. So he doesn't throw much. If you force him to work, he gasses early.
So yeah, I've got some concerns for Anthony, but I have those same concerns for Deontay as well. It's a double-edged sword.